Good morning. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. We are bringing you our show today from the new Uintah County Conference Center in Vernal, Utah. And one of the first conferences at this new facility is the Uintah Basin Energy Summit. It happens every year out here, and this is the first time in this beautiful new venue. Our goal today is to talk about energy. Now, most of us know that oil prices have dropped and gasoline prices have gone down at the pump. We all go hooray. But most of us also are aware that that has had an impact on the economies of Duchesne and Uintah County in particular. Today we're going to go inside and talk to some of the leading experts in the field to find out the history of how we got here, where we are, and what the future holds on energy in Utah. So let's get started on our journey.
60% of our economy and 50% of our jobs are tied to the extractive industry. And so what happens in the extractive industry really influences our economy a lot. We're endeavoring to diversify the economy, and we've done that some. We need to do that even more, but the energy companies and what they do here is very important to our local economy.
Falling energy prices are having a big impact on the energy-producing counties in Utah. But this isn't the first time this has happened. Energy is a commodity, and commodities on a global market will have their swings up and down. Rural communities have to be smart in developing systems and backup plans that help modify those fluctuations and make the communities more stable in those periods of up and down.
The cattle industry sees the same thing with the price of beef. The oil and gas industry, the timber industry, they're a building block of the country. It's either energy, it's agriculture, it's something that is actually produced. Some of the very few things that are produced, but it's also dependent on the market.
And this is personal experience. This is not from the National Association of Royalty Owners. I've been around this business for over 35 years. And from the bust of the 80s, I think you can look at places like Oklahoma and Texas that learned some big lessons, and that they needed to divest themselves a bit from one single industry. So the idea that you have, some high-tech stuff, the computer stuff going on in Texas, Austin, Texas, for example, Dell Computers is based there.
The Uintah Basin has seen some of those changes in the latest boom, and they have invested to bring other industries into the community. So the landscape is very different this time as opposed to the last boom and bust.
Looking at 2013, Uintah County, our average wage income was the highest in the state of Utah. Duchesne County was number 2. And that's because of the oil and gas industry, and they're good, high-paying jobs. And so it is a catalyst, and when we have that strong, healthy economy, it helps the entire state of Utah as well.
I think Vernal is in a much better place during this downturn than they were in the one in the 80s, because there is more recreation, there's more interest in a diverse economy. And personally, I think that is something Vernal needs to continue to do. The Uintah Basin has got, like most of Utah, it's got some great resources. And I don't ever want to see any of our community ever go so far and buy into one industry so much that the others suffer. I would really like to see a good balance. And we're in a very fortunate position here in the Uintah Basin due to the location of our resources. They don't conflict with each other as much as some places do. Our oil and gas is not necessarily in the highest demand recreation areas, and vice versa. So our potential to not only get through this, but also to build a much stronger economy for the future is very good.
I have seen a transition even over the last decade where there has been a lot of dependency on oil and gas production here, and I think it has delivered some very positive economic outcomes, and it's been a cornerstone. And back to the notion that energy is a cornerstone of the quality of life that we have. And it's in the Wasatch Front, it's in Vernal, it's in Roosevelt, It's in all of Duchesne and Uintah counties, as well as our other energy producing counties. So when we see commodity price fluctuations, it can have more of an impact on those local communities. But one of the key things I've seen happening is the diversification within these economies. The energy has actually propelled more businesses and more opportunities coming to these communities. And I think that the counties have taken advantage of those opportunities.
The importance of energy extraction and the wide variety of natural resources available in the Uintah Basin in particular make it the perfect place for the companies who develop the resources to meet and get on the same page no matter what the price of oil is.
There's synergy that happens. There's a lot of information that we all glean from each other. I just think there's so much value in, for myself as a community leader, being able to hear the latest updates, to hear things that sometimes we're not aware of, and how can we be helpful. The networking is extremely important, the building of the relationships.
The biggest thing about the Energy Summit is to understand the industry, to help them tell their story, to educate the public in what's happening. Here in the basin, that's our livelihood.
When we come back, we'll talk about some of the opportunities that exist currently in the Uintah Basin, even though the price of energy is down. We'll be right back with the county seat.
The Bear Lake Valley is a beautiful, rural, historical, and recreational paradise. The changing of the season makes now a great time to come our way to see the warm colors of fall in contrast with the cool blues of Bear Lake. Visit us in the Bear Lake Valley. Come for the ride, stay for the adventure.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking about the oil and gas industry in Utah. Now, the price at the pump is down, and for many of us that seems like a great advantage. But it does raise a question. What is the impact that it is having on the communities in Utah that develop those resources? And how big of an impact is it?
It is a change of pace. I think everybody recognizes for a long time the economy out here in the Uintah Basin was leading the entire state and did for a long time. With these falling energy prices, that certainly has had an effect. Where in the rest of the state, the economy has strengthened and has got stronger. I think from our Energy Summit, one of the resounding themes here today was we're here for the long haul. That's what our energy companies were telling us. We're here for the long haul. We recognize that currently prices are low, but projections and everything they have is they're looking to the future. And I think most of them are seeing for the next year or two, it's going to be difficult. When you project out getting back to 2017, things look a whole lot better. Some of our producers, some of our energy companies actually said this is a healthy thing, because what it's done, it's given them an opportunity to look deep within. They've been able to streamline. They're able to do some things that they hadn't been able to do. And essentially what they're saying is when prices rebound, we're going to be in a stronger position than we've ever been before. And when we come back, we will come back even stronger than we were when we started to scale back.
This resource has been here for a long time. The resource isn't going anywhere, and it behooves us to think long term. So we're going to engage in the things that we have to do today to make sure that as prices do come up, that we'll be in a position to begin activities again or increase the activities that are already taking place.
When given the option between prosperity and tightening the belt, obviously everyone would pick prosperity. But unlike some of the downturn cycles of the past, this time the resources aren't leaving the area. And it's because they have a much larger horizon view of the picture. Well, the reason for that is simple. While prices may be down, the demand for energy is still high, so they know that there's a rebound down the road. This provides an excellent opportunity for both traditional and unconventional sources of extraction to kind of retool to see if they can find a more efficient way to extract the resource.
In one sense, since we're pre-production, the price today really doesn't matter to us because we're not selling anything. So, the price is irrelevant. But looking at completion of construction, first production a couple months out, of course we're quite concerned. Having said that, the facility we're building is we're calling it a commercial demonstration facility, and we want to use this to show ourselves and other producers that this way of producing bitumen is viable and is going to work. And most of the companies that we're talking to have a longer price horizon that they look at. They're not concerned about what the price might be over the next 2 months. They're looking 10 and 15 years out. And again, if you show that it's technically feasible, then there's a lot of interest in that for further development.
Technology changes. Where there used to be 50 drill rigs running, drilling 500 wells, you can drill the same number of wells with 15 rigs now. Now, the good side of that is reduction in emissions, higher efficiencies from the company's standpoint, but the downside is the support that you used to see. Every well, every drilling rig, you needed a construction company to do pad design and construction. And it's a metamorphosis. It's something that's changing.
And since the shale revolution and all the production of methane in this country, our methane emissions are actually down, and we're producing more natural gas today than we ever have. So this industry is doing some right things, okay? And the country's doing some right things as well.
The outlook on energy development isn't quite as bright as it was a year or two ago. But everybody involved is committed to the long term. They are going to weather the storm. In the meantime, their plans are to develop a more nimble industry, better capable of extracting resources in the future. That doesn't mean that there aren't challenges. We will look at some of those when we come back.
Davis County is the amusement capital of Utah, where people of all ages can enjoy fun rides and family attractions all year long. Experience over 50 thrilling rides at Lagoon, bowling or miniature golf at Boondocks, cool off with the family at Cherry Hill, or get out of the house and over to the Rush Fun Place. There's no end to the fun you can have in Davis County. Come to eat, stay, and play. Plan your next visit by going to playindavis.com and discover the fun for yourself.
There are a couple great things about the Uintah Basin. One is it's still small, it's community. It makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody. When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uintah Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uintah County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
There is a place where the desert comes alive, where rain breaks forth from solid stone and gardens spring from blistered rock. There is a place with enough color to make a rainbow jealous, where boulders are bigger than buildings and cliffs are higher than clouds. There is a place that will straighten your step, tighten your grip, widen your eyes, and open your jaw. There is a place.
Welcome back to the county seat. So far, we've taken a look at the current status of energy production in Utah, but there are challenges ahead, and they don't just involve the price of the commodity. A lot of it has to deal with federal regulations that control the industry and how they go about extracting the resource. A lot of it has to do with even being allowed to try new methods. But a larger part is involved in the permitting process of exploring for energy on publicly held lands.
Generally, what we're seeing from the federal agencies, I guess I'll put it in this slide, is a naivete about how oil and gas business operates. We're seeing it whether it has to do with air emissions and air regulations, or if it has to do with the way that we initiate leasing programs. Typically, these producers do need very large plays as they look at the near-term, mid-term, and long-term opportunities for developing those resources. So they do have cycles where they need to acquire leases and resources so that they can demonstrate that there is a reason to make the capital investment today. And these capital investments are significant. If you look at, $2 to $4 million to drill a well, who's going to invest that money if that's the only opportunity? So there has to be these opportunities across the basin within these different fields that continue to present long-term returns to these businesses.
Securing leases is only the tip of the iceberg. In addition to securing leases, there are new federal regulations that loom that may significantly change how we extract energy. One of them is the sage grouse. A listing on sage grouse as an endangered species could dramatically affect not only exploration, but development and extraction. Another area that is of high concern is the new changes to the Clean Water Act. A third area is air quality and the proposed ozone standards. If those are incorporated, that will hamper energy development. The concern of local governments and the economies that have these resources available is that if it becomes too difficult to do business in Utah, the industry will simply go somewhere else. Some people might think that that is a good thing, but that leads us to our next problem. How misinformed is the general public about how energy is really extracted?
The consumption of energy, fossil fuels in this country continues to go up, okay? It's not going away. And the government can talk about, and politicians can talk about, well, we've got to do away with the dirty carbon stuff, we've got to do away with all the nasty fossil fuels. The point is, we don't have anything to replace it right now.
There was a lot of concern over hydraulic fracturing and that process of releasing oils or gases from shale plays. So that's where they go in and they essentially, very simply put, kind of crack the rock and hold it open to allow the gas, and then ultimately they applied it to oil production as well to release the oil and gas. And I think some people had a misperception that the fluids that they injected to force that fracturing or the sands that they injected to keep those fractures open might have some challenges for local aquifer or groundwater systems. And EPA itself found, and the governor has messaged this as recent as today, that EPA found that there were no impacts from hydraulic fracturing on groundwater systems. So that whole, I think a lot of misinformation generally about hydraulic fracturing and how it's done and the impacts of it have certainly been overplayed. But BLM stepped in with a federal fracking rule, a federal proposed fracking rule. Well, the state of Utah has been regulating, fracturing for 40 some odd years with absolutely no incident. And when I say no incident, it's no incident in terms of impacts to our environment and no issues of safety.
I was at a conference last week and I heard a great presentation where the guy said, if I could afford a Tesla, I would go buy it and I'd put a bumper sticker on the back of it that says powered by coal. Because that's basically the fact right now. Most electricity is still generated by coal. The crazy thing about that is we have, a quarter to a third of the world's coal in this country that we're saying, this is a huge energy source. Why wouldn't we want to develop it? Why wouldn't we want to find ways that we can use that in an environmentally sound manner? Right? That's my argument. Same thing with oil and natural gas. I think we have had a paradigm shift in the technology to develop these shale resources that we've got. Some of the oil sands in Canada and now here in the West that we've got. Huge, huge resources. Why not use those? Why not utilize those? You can talk about renewables, and our current renewables of solar and wind can't power us the way we're powered today. You can't be in a building like this and rely on those systems without a change in that technology that hasn't occurred yet.
These notions really aren't that popular in this day and age, but we'll save that discussion for another time. The conversation we do need to have is that you can't just turn off coal and natural gas and still expect to keep the lights on.
Every resource that we choose has an environmental impact. You look at the largest solar array that's been developed, I believe, in the world by Berkshire Hathaway Energy in Southern California. I think it covers 20,000 plus acres for just over 500 megawatts of power, so 550 megawatts of power. You look at that footprint, that is a long-term footprint. Isn't to say it's a bad project? No, but let's understand what that footprint looks like compared to a natural gas plant of a similar size, 550 megawatts, that covers about 40 acres. So that's one trade-off. But you know, when you look at the solar array, you might say zero emissions, whereas the gas plant has some emissions. So there's always an environmental trade-off, and there always will be for any resource. And if we try to pick the winners and losers, and we rely less on the market to do that, we're going to be more likely to make bad choices, because we still don't know what the impacts of, you know, adding all of these different resources is long term. And so the governor always says that Utah is a successful economy because we're a diverse economy. We're the fourth most diverse economy in the nation. We believe the same thing is true about our energy portfolio. The more diverse it is, the more resilient it is. And that's what we really should be driving towards. So it's not pitting one resource against the other. It really is truly about the long-term benefits of all of our resource opportunities.
We hope that the conversation that we have had so far will encourage a conversation that you will have with your friends, neighbors, business partners, and your local government. Because as we can see, there's a lot more to Utah's energy picture than just carbon-based fuel. However, it's still a very relevant part of the energy picture and will be for some time to come. Well, I hope that conversation gets started as soon as this broadcast ends. Right now, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we will spend a few minutes peering into the crystal ball to see what the energy future looks like in Utah over the next 5 to 10 years.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Sevier County is perfect. The brand new fairgrounds facility includes a large meeting hall, breakout rooms, and a perfect kitchen facility to feed just a few or hundreds. The county also boasts the Sevier Valley Center on the campus of Snow College Richfield. This facility includes an arena and numerous breakout rooms that can be used for any type of meeting, conference, or event. When planning your next meeting or conference, consider placing it in the center of it all, Sevier County.
Welcome back to the county seat. We thought we would wrap up today by taking out our binoculars and peering into the future to see what the energy development scenario looks like in the Uintah Basin in the next few years to come.
So then when you have something like what I've heard it described as, we broke the oil market by, you know, the fracking revolution in oil, and that revolution is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. That, you know, the U.S. will continue to be very relevant on oil production because these producers who have come in can swing very quickly. They can go into production and they go out of production fairly quickly, and that's sort of what we're seeing. And so some of those impacts. But I think that we're going to continue, maybe to answer your question, I hope, we're going to continue to be in a global market. We can't predict everything that's going to happen. You know, if it's going to, I don't think anyone perfectly predicted or understood the impact of hydraulic fracturing and those technologies being applied to oil production, that we would be where we are today. But the downturn is certainly a time for innovation. And I think that that's what you're seeing from industry is how can we operate in this cost environment? And it's not just the conventional resources. I think we've got some unconventional plays like the oil shale and oil sands that are looking at how can they adapt to this lower price environment by lowering their costs.
Even talking to the biggest companies in the world, it's getting very difficult to justify those types of expenditures. Like, you know, ExxonMobil spent $13 billion on their first phase up in Athabasca. That's the biggest single expenditure they've ever made. And they're starting to say, okay, we can't do this anymore, so we need to find new and better ways of developing that resource. And if you can do it in a way where you take off a bite-sized chunk, you know, maybe it's 25,000 barrels a day instead of 100, and you spend, you know, $1 billion versus 13 billion, it makes a whole lot more sense, and it's much easier to justify, and you're not taking such a big risk on the company by doing that.
We have a big initiative to provide more fulsome energy education, K through 12, into our colleges and tech schools, and also into our research institutions. And I think that education is critical. It's critical for understanding the energy system and also for developing a workforce. And that workforce can be ready when we start to see those prices go up again. And then the second thing that I think is critical, and we hear this from industry, is infrastructure. Whether it's roads to have access to resource, whether it's pipelines to move resource around, whether it's rail to allow greater opportunity to export, or if it's port facilities, that all of those things are needed in order to continue to produce our resources, because we produce more here than we actually use. But if we can't use it locally and we don't have opportunity to get to market, then that's going to limit production.
As a county leader, one of the things that I look to is it's not just the energy industry. Agriculture is very important. We want to continue to diversify our economy. There's a lot of things, a lot of sectors here that's very important. But one of the things that our public lands initiative that we're working on very hard, I think is another tool that we have that it will strengthen our economy and make us much stronger than we've ever been. That's going to be good for recreation. That's going to be good for all segments of our economy, and it'll certainly help us, and it'll be very strong for our energy as well.
I think that the quality of life in these communities is outstanding, and I think that the quality of life that's been realized here has really been in large part because of the commitment that our energy companies have made to this particular area for development, and also because we've had community leaders who have recognized the importance of that development and also worked with businesses and with their citizens to make sure that they have a diverse economy that can be sustainable in the long term. So it's partnering to make sure that you have viable communities long term, and I don't think that that can be underrated or understated. This is a great place to live, and I think it's going to continue to be for a long time.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation on energy today. It's an important conversation, and we hope that you will become engaged. We will have future episodes on different parts of the energy portfolio in Utah, so stay tuned to the county seat. Beyond the conversation that we have had, we hope to hear back from you through our social media. You can find those sources by going to our website, thecountyseat.tv. And we encourage you, more importantly, to carry this conversation out to your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your local officials and the business community. They all need to be part of the determination of how we go forward with energy in Utah and what will provide us overall the best quality of life. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Make sure that you are part of the process. And we'll see you next week on the county seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4.